Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Green Disruptors Scaling the Future. I'm your host, Megan, and today we're diving into one of the most carbon-intensive industries on the planet, cement. Joining me is Kas Farsad, Chief Strategy Officer at Fortera, a pioneering low-carbon cement producer. Fortera has spent the last 17 years perfecting a process that not only slashes CO2 emissions by about 70% compared to traditional cement, but actually locks CO2 into the product itself. We'll explore how they went from lab scale proof of concept to commissioning their first commercial plant, the challenges of scaling such a massive industrial process, and the art of partnering with legacy cement operators to drive real decarbonization. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Green Disruptors Scaling the Future. Today, we are talking low carbon cement, so I'm excited for this conversation. I have Kas Farsad on with me today, and he is the Chief Strategy Officer at Fortera. So welcome, Kas.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so tell us first and foremost, if somebody hasn't heard of Fortera before, describe in a nutshell what you do.
Sure. So we are a low carbon cement producer. What that means is we make cement, so ordinary cement that you'd use in your roads and highways and sidewalks. But we do so using a process that makes the same cement, but with just less CO2 emissions, about 70% less.
So I know this is a problem that scientists have been trying to solve for a long time because cement factories are one of the highest emitters globally. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's about 8% of global CO2 emissions comes from cement and concrete.
So, I mean, what is the process that makes you be able to reduce it by 70%?
So the way we make cement today, we take a mineral called limestone, which is a calcium carbonate mineral, mine it, grind it, and burn it. What's happening in that process is the starting rock that we use to make our cement actually has CO2 in it. And when you burn it, you're not just releasing CO2 coming from the process itself, the energy to drive the process.
It's releasing it from the rock.
Exactly. Half the weight of the rock is pretty much CO2, and that's getting released in addition to the energy. So it's just a huge emitter.
And does that just end up like in the water, in the land, like where does that go in that process?
So that CO2 ends up in the atmosphere, and it's an interesting cycle. That limestone got formed to begin with by taking CO2 that was in the atmosphere and mineralizing it, and that's how we get those rocks to begin with. So it is a circular process, but the cadence at which that happens is really slow. So nature's doing that work, but it's on,
But we're producing way too fast for nature to keep up.
Yes, we've accelerated and nature hasn't really sped up.
So yeah, how is there a way to stop that CO2 from getting out in the rock when you're breaking it up and doing that process?
So that actually ties into what we do. So when we make cement, we emit CO2. In nature, it's exactly the opposite process. There's when coral reefs are formed or when that limestone was formed to begin with, that starting material, it's actually taking CO2 from the atmosphere, reacting with calcium and forming those hard building blocks. So that natural cycle that's going to happen in the long run, we've recreated that process, industrialized it, and basically took those same building blocks, basically calcium and CO2, and made our cement based on that process. So instead of emitting CO2, we actually take that CO2 molecule and incorporate it in the finished product so it never gets released.
So you guys have an operating facility in Reading, right? Where are you at in terms of scaling this solution?
So this is 17 years in the making. Yeah, this year we commissioned our first, what we're calling our small commercial plant. It's only considered small because the cement industry is such a large industry. So this is 15,000 tons per year. It's about an acre of land. So this is not a small production facility, but a typical cement plant is 1 million tons per year. So any other industry, this would be full scale. In cement, this is just a drop in the ocean.
Excuse me. I mean, it's just a long process, like getting the science right and getting all the equipment and permits, all of that, like 17 years. So like, what
what kind of phase are you in right now, and what are maybe the next few steps to expanding past this one location or just creating more output in general?
Yeah, so just given the size of this industry and the scale that we actually need to get to. So, 15,000 tons per year. This is, like I said, 17 years in the making. To get from where we started to today, there's no way to accelerate this path. You're building infrastructure.
Right.
You're creating a material that has a life-bearing application. All you've been doing for 17 years is just reducing the risk of every single step in the process, every unavoidable step in the process. It's tempting to just go straight from the lab to full scale, but there's
Hmm.
so much risk tied into that process that everything you do day to day is to just eliminate that risk for each of those major milestones. And that's lab scale to pilot to demo to small commercial to full scale. For us, what's exciting is we've survived that process and we got to small commercial, and the next step is full scale. This is it. This is the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exciting. Um, so is there a way, like, there's already so much existing infrastructure, obviously. So is there a way for you to come in and kind of partner with existing facilities to start producing this way, or does it require totally building new stuff?
So that's I'd say that's more the business case, right? You can, if we wanted to, we can go out and build a full scale plant, right? Just
Hmm.
greenfield is what they call it, where you just start from scratch. But the real sport that we have to play is what's riskier, going on an
Yeah.
island and building a plant from scratch, or teaming up with an existing player, finding synergies upstream of what we're trying to do, downstream of what we're trying to do, and de-risking. So the same 17 years of de-risking the technology and getting it to this commercial scale, that same exact process, that same climb, like, climbing, to me, I equate it to climbing Mount
Inch by
Everest.
inch.
Yeah, like yeah, it has to happen on the business side. And that's just de-risking the entire endeavor for all parties involved.
So I know on our pre-call we talked about how it can be really difficult getting existing companies to kind of come on board with this because risk is the whole equation for them. So tell us kind of more about how you navigate those relationships.
Yeah, I mean, the industry, not just cement, just energy, any of these major
Yeah.
industrial producers, right? These critical materials and products that we rely on, right? The real rock stars in these industries are operators and logistics people because they're moving. I mean, in cement, it's 5 billion tons per year of powder being moved around the planet.
They're the air traffic controllers of
Yeah, exactly. So it's every single day, like, their job is to eliminate even an ounce of risk.
and inefficiency.
And yeah, it's all about efficiency, and the real talent is the ability to move that powder as efficiently as they do, as cost effectively as they do. Because if they do a bad job, it just raises the price of the product. And we need cement for our infrastructure, our roads, our
Yeah.
buildings. So it's this game of, we need them to be the best that they can be at operations and logistics because we're the beneficiaries. We're the ones that get to buy the concrete at this really fair
Right.
price.
Yeah.
So when you introduce new technologies, you approach them and say, hey, I have this new way to make this cement, or I have a new way to manufacture a cement. You're introducing risk. You're disrupting, we're used to the word disruption as like this brand new technology. You're disrupting their operation. You're
Mm,
introducing a new idea that they haven't optimized it. They haven't actually familiarized with, and you're expecting them to get excited. And then you're surprised when
yeah.
they're not super excited to hear, I have a new way for you to make cement. I know you've been optimizing yours for 100 years, but let's try this way. It's a very
It sounds
off-putting.
laughable when you say it that way. It's
very
like
off-
you picture this sticking the screwdriver into the machine and just making everything stop. That's
Yes,
probably what how their reaction is.
exactly. So it's meeting them halfway with that proposition.
So how are you, I mean, I'm sure this is still a learning process, and the more you expand and partner with people like this, it's going to refine. But what are some ways that have helped you, Forterra, position yourself to show that the risk reduction as best you can?
It's what so we I'm a material scientist. A lot of our company, we all have technical backgrounds, so we're obsessed with the technology, right? And in general, for the most for the most part, you start a company because you have an excellent product that you're excited about, right? And you spend all your time making that product better, faster, stronger.
And it's like your baby.
Exactly. It's like your baby. And
So
then
when other people don't think it's cute, it really hurts.
you're confused, right? So you're like, why don't you love
Yeah.
my baby? But what's really happening is we're getting so obsessed and fixated on the product and what it can do.
Mm,
And we're forgetting to be empathetic to the customer and what they actually need. I'd argue it's very easy to spend time trying to make your product twice as good as it is to disengage and actually understand the market you're trying to enter, the people that actually have to adopt this, and spend that time getting to know the market and what it actually needs and what your customers' actual concerns are. You know, they're not necessarily, there's a minimum performance that they need out of the product. Everything else is great, but they also need to maintain their current operations. They cannot lose even a day of production. So instead of solving for the product, you need to start solving for how you're actually going to get the product into their hands comfortably.
I mean, are these people even willing to like have a conversation with you? It's like that seems like a really hard door to get in. And even if you get in, it seems like the guard's going to be pretty up just because they can't afford the disruption.
This is where everyone's human. We
Hmm.
all like new things. We all like interesting things. Their industries, they're all open to having the conversation. They're all excited. They want new things. Everybody wants new things.
That's a good point. We
Yes,
like shiny
we
stuff.
do. Exactly. The challenge is it's, their ability to adopt it's a very slim window. They cannot, for the sake of new and shiny, they cannot cannibalize or alienate their existing operations. And that's where the tug of war begins. That's where it's very difficult. People perceive that as like, oh, they don't like to innovative things. It's like, no,
Yeah,
everybody
that's not
loves
fair.
yeah, everybody loves innovative things.
I
They
fell
just
into
don't.
that trap just now. Thanks for correcting me.
No, it's just a misconception. And that's where the empathy, it's like, put yourself in their shoes. They have to move 1 million tons of powder per year, and you're going to come into their operation and say, stop what you're doing. I have an idea. That's not a good way to start a conversation.
No, it is not. So teach me, what is a better way? Well, I guess how do you demonstrate that to them? Or like what is the solution to this problem that they have helped you become aware of that is their number one priority?
You bring them in on the team. You bring them in on the development. You work with them on what they need to see, get more and more comfortable, right? And this is where we could stay in our box and keep making our cement, stronger and develop strength faster. But that's not actually what the problem is. The problem is they have certain hurdles that they have to clear to feel comfortable with the technology, and that's where this obsession we have on the product side needs to be on the customer side as well. What do they need to see for them to be able to actually move forward, right? And it's just de-risking, right? These are de-risking experts, the best in the world at eliminating risk. So that's what you're doing with them.
I mean, yeah, that's brilliant. And in that process, you're developing trust and rapport that you need to make these big partnership decisions. So, I mean, what's your current playbook, I guess, as far
Yeah.
as like how do you even find the right people to talk to and get these conversations and kind of like education relationships going?
So, the comment earlier about are people even receptive? Getting the conversation going is not the hard part. You have a lot of, especially now. I'd say 10, 15 years ago it was definitely hard.
Mm.
But nowadays everybody is focused. Climate is top of mind for everybody. And if it's not top of mind for the person, someone in their family is top of mind and they're getting an earful. So it's not difficult to get that conversation going. What it really is trying to get your solution to the point to meet them, let's just say 80% of the way.
Mm.
And that really is the biggest game. So for us to build a small commercial plant, right? It's a very confusing thing to do. In the lab, we proved we can make this material. We built a pilot plant that was, a 1 ton per day pilot plant, and prove we could make it in a continuous fashion. And then we had to make another demonstration plant that's even larger. And then now we had to make a small commercial plant These are just, you're taking these steps in the right direction, and you're not doing it because it makes good business sense to make all these facilities and consume, it's multiple year installations and you got to run it and you got to staff up. You're doing it because you're showing your customer that this is scalable, this isn't risky, this is less risky than they've perceived. And you're scaling at these incremental rates that people can wrap their head around.
Well, and that's the positive thing about those operations people is they probably are very data driven. So if you can just find an effective way to show them that data, that does do most of your work for you.
Exactly. And then that's where your actions as a company, your scaling as a company becomes something that you're selling in addition to the product that you had in mind, right? Yeah, we're selling a new cement chemistry. We're also selling a competency, an ability to execute on when we say we're going to build a plant and it's going to produce X, here's 3 data points proving that the 3 plants we've built to date produce the product that we said we could make. And that just builds that confidence. And it's really it's eliminating risk. That when we say we can build a full-scale plant, we can because we're 3 for 3.
Yeah. So now that we're Super Bowl time, what's the next year looking like for Fortera? Like, are there some major forward steps that you're trying to get?
Yeah, I mean, and that's where the full-scale facility it's significant in the sense that this is our flagship facility, right? Everything we've done to date has been to de-risk the construction and operation of that facility. It's crazy to package up a history like that. We have an idea for a new way to make cement, one that doesn't emit a CO2 molecule, it actually incorporates it. And then all that product validation you're doing, all that product development you're doing, it's an entire endeavor in itself, but you're actually creating a product. Then you have to create the facility, design and invent the facility that can make that product. And then you have to scale that technology and still honor that chemistry while making larger and larger volumes. But in the end, what you're really doing is you're creating a talent pool of people who nobody knows their kids better than the people who raised them, right? You watched every micro growth of your child from birth until an adult. So you're training those people to be part of this scaling process because in the end, we have to build this full-scale facility. It needs to run, and it needs to run immediately. You don't get very many swings at the plate at full scale. It's very expensive. It's very time-consuming. And let's say it doesn't work, it's very hard to decide exactly what happened. And that's where having the people be part of that journey. You have that many more people that are so intimate with this process, got to watch this child go from birth until full scale. This is the year we're in right now. Well, it's full scale time. It's commercial time.
Yeah. How many people are currently on the team?
So Fortera is pretty lean. We're about 86 people at the moment.
Yeah.
What's nice is it's a lot of people that have been in it for the long haul. I've been in this, for 17 years. I was an early employee on the production side, on the chemistry side. So we had to bring a lot of those people along for the ride. So this has just been almost 2 decades of chasing this chemistry.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like in order to have people that are that loyal to the company and stay for that long, it's got to be good leadership and good culture around the project and probably a lot of passionate people who really care about the impact.
Yeah, and that's the curse of tackling such a big endeavor. It takes a lot of time. This isn't, not something you can do in 5 or 7 years. This is a multi-decade thing. But the gift it gives is if you succeed, the impact is massive.
Yeah,
having that
sure.
having that proportionality of impact to commitment, it plays out.
So help me understand the business model just a little better. Obviously, if you have a full-scale plant, you sell the spent, right? But if you're also helping other companies adopt these technologies, is that how many revenue stream potentials are there?
So the cement industry, what's nice about it is it's actually pretty consolidated. So you don't have to have too many partners because each cement player has a portfolio of production facilities. So what you're really doing is you're aligning with a cement producer and you're getting that relationship built because if it works for one of their facilities, it works for all of them. So it's this industry that, for them being accused of being slow moving, they're actually one of the fastest moving industries in the world. It's as soon as they do meet a material that they like, they can proliferate and produce it at scales that no one else can match. It's getting over that initial hurdle that's the hard part.
So, I mean, just to make sure I understood your answer. So it's like, is that part of Fortera's business model? Is there like a consulting piece there, or is it like actually getting installers to go and like help them upgrade their technology or?
So we actually are interested in building the facilities, operating the facilities. There's so much work that still has to be done to just get this to be a ubiquitous product that can be adopted. So we partner. 15 years ago, the business model was to park across the street and just compete. You're not competing with the cement industry. It's trillions of dollars of infrastructure in the ground. It's a supply chain that you can never recreate. So for us, what we're excited about is the technology. The upstream operation, which is the mining and grinding, that's already in place. We use limestone. They use limestone. Downstream supply chain, the rail, just the ability to get the powder out to the market at the volumes that they do, they've mastered that. That's their IP. That's their infrastructure that they own. We would never be able to recreate that. If you have a solution, you need to be partnering. And there's no way to compete.
Yeah. Well, I think in a lot of senses, I feel like the business world, where possible, is shifting to that model. Just because, instead of everyone competing with everyone, it's like when you combine forces with somebody who has something you don't have, suddenly your capacity is double, or much more so. So it seems like it's a shift in the mentality behind growth. And I think it shows a maturity like in society at a whole level.
Well, you're taking advantage of those operators and those logistics folks. They've been mastering their art for the last 50 years. They've been making the supply chain so perfect that you'd be a fool not to want to benefit from that
Totally. Yeah.
supply chain that they created. They're vertically integrated. So it's almost like an identity issue where you realize, what is your contribution to this supply chain? And you focus on that rather than try to, we use the word disrupt, and I know but you don't want to disrupt supply chains. That's a bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So piggybacking off of all that progress, you don't want to start that over. That's too good of an asset that's been created.
Right. Well, and from a marketing perspective and relationship building perspective, it's much better to come in more humbly and say, wow, you're really good at X, Y, Z. And I can, it's like, I want to learn from your expertise. It gets people's guards down instead of saying, here's our special thing.
Yeah, you've been doing it wrong. We have a better way of doing it. I say, no, they've been doing it fantastic.
People don't love that.
Yeah. There's just a different way you can do it, and it might make sense in some cases it doesn't. But that's the hard part, balancing that.
All right. So I have one final question for you. If you could solve one marketing challenge in the next year, just snap of a finger, what would that be?
That's a good question. So when you say marketing, this is more about consumer adoption, or just
It could be from either side. Like it could be a communications issue with, potential partners, or it could be just getting the word out at large of this is another option. So whatever feels more relevant.
I'd say that the most difficult thing for us, and this is just a nuance of our chemistry, we make calcium carbonate cement, right? And what's odd about it is limestone, the starting material, is calcium carbonate. Our finished product is calcium carbonate. It's very difficult for folks who understand limestone is not a cement. And we're over here broadcasting, it's actually, we've made a cement. It's identical composition. It requires them to see it to believe it, which means we have to do a lot of in-person demonstrations because It's just such a new concept that calcium carbonate in itself can be cementitious. So that seeing it to believe it makes it it's very hard to kind of send that messaging far and wide, because it's an intimate process to, have to do it with them. We understand it because it's such a new chemistry, but that getting past that point where just the stigma of calcium carbonate not being cementitious or having the ability to be cementitious, it's difficult to navigate just because of the personal component that's required to get that messaging out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and I imagine that the different audiences would really change like the way that you talk about it. It's like, I'm not a chemist, I definitely don't get that, but you probably don't care if I get it or not. It's like I'm not the person who needs to be swayed in any way on. But I'm excited that it's happening.
Yeah, no, this is what we're excited about is every time, like a technology like ours, right? We're kind of balancing two universes where it's a low carbon cement, but it's also a really efficient and effective way to cement things together, right? It's a brand new chemistry. So, we're obsessed with the fact that it's this exciting new cement, but also we get the benefit that it's also a low carbon cement. And kind of bringing that balance back where there exists a universe where if you simplify a chemistry or you simplify a process, it's better economically, but it's also better for the environment, right? They're not these mutually exclusive things where everything green has to cost more. It's like, no, if you just use less energy to do the same job, everything comes down. The cost comes down. So we're excited to be a proof point that that's possible. You can be green, but also have a process that's economical.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And this is really exciting. And thank you for kind of helping me understand the process and the product and where Fortera is at. I want you to win the Super Bowl for sure. So thank you so much for coming on today. And do you want to maybe like share the website or if people want to get in touch with you guys?
Sure. Yeah. If you're curious about a little more detail on what the chemistry is or where we're at or the scale that we're at, forterausa.com or forteraglobal.com.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Kas. It's been a great conversation.
Of course. Thank you.
That wraps up our conversation with Kas Farsad from Fortera. We've learned how Fortera's industrialized mineralization process transforms a century-old cement industry into a potential carbon sink. The careful risk reduction steps needed to scale from pilot to full-scale production, and the power of empathetic partnership with established operators. If you're as excited as I am about the future of low-carbon building materials, be sure to visit forterausa.com or forteraglobal.com to learn more. Thanks for listening to Green Disruptors, Scaling the Future. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your network. Until next time, keep innovating, keep disrupting, and keep scaling the future.